Welcome to the deep dive. This time we're tackling a story that honestly feels like something you'd see in the news. It's got those financial twists, you know. We've got a ton of documents, court stuff, financial statements, even personal letters, all about a property in Jamaica. So we're trying to understand one person's journey through all of this.
Yeah, and it's a journey that starts with, well, wanting to help others, like so many do. We're looking at this 19-acre property used for farming originally. But get this, the debtor was letting people lease parts of it for almost nothing, just a tiny peppercorn rent to support the people around them, their community.
That really stood out to me too. It says a lot about them as a person. This isn't someone trying to game the system. So how does someone like that end up in this kind of financial mess?
Well, the story really starts back in '95. The debtor takes out a loan to refinance an overdraft they already had. Sounds normal enough, right?
Right. Pretty standard financial move.
But here's where it goes sideways. They end up going over the overdraft limit multiple times, and that's when the interest rate really becomes a problem. We're talking 30%, compounded every single day.
Wait, 30%? Compounded daily? Can you even explain how that works? I mean, that seems almost impossible to keep up with, even if you were trying your best.
It's wild, right? Basically, every single day, the amount they owe goes up by almost a third of what it already was. It's a recipe for disaster, for debt to spiral totally out of control, and that's exactly what happened. To make matters even worse, the debt ends up sold off to a subsidiary of FINSAC, the Financial Sector Adjustment Company.
FINSAC. Now, that name's practically synonymous with the financial crisis Jamaica went through in the 90s. For anyone who doesn't know, it was basically a government group set up to, stabilize the financial sector.
Yeah.
But a lot of their methods, well, they were controversial, weren't they?
Absolutely. A lot of critics said that, yeah, they were trying to stop a total meltdown, but what they did often came at a big cost, especially for people who'd taken out loans. They got caught in the middle.
So we've got our debtor already stuck with this crazy high interest rate, and now their debt is with FINSAC. What happens next?
Surprisingly, there's actually an attempt to fix things. In March 2001, the debtor and their lawyers, they reached this settlement agreement with FINSAC's subsidiary. They agree on a set amount for the debt with the goal of paying it off in full by July 31st of that year.
Okay, so there's hope, maybe, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but knowing this story, it can't be that easy, right?
You'd be right to be skeptical. This is where, well, things outside their control really start to impact the situation. Remember how the debtor was already letting people lease land for almost nothing to support their community?
Yeah.
Well, they take it even further. They decide to sell some of their land to the Jamaican government, specifically for a school to use to be a playing field. Pretty selfless, wouldn't you say?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Trying to help their community and take care of this debt at the same time. Can't blame them for trying.
Exactly. But as often happens with governments, things slow down, like way down. This deal involved the Ministry of Education and their processes. Let's just say they're not known for speed. Every delay made it harder for the debtor to hit that July 31st deadline.
So even with good intentions, they're getting squeezed. Like they're trying to outrun something that just keeps getting bigger. What other challenges are they dealing with at this point?
Oh, it's a perfect storm. At the same time, they're trying to subdivide their land to make it easier to sell off more. And what does that require? Yep. More approvals from the government, more bureaucratic roadblocks. And this whole time, that 30% interest is just ticking away in the background.
I bet that feeling of being trapped really starts to set in. You're doing everything you can, trying to make the responsible choices, but the whole system feels like it's working against you.
That's it, exactly. A classic catch-22. They're doing the things they need to do to settle the debt, trying to sell land, right? But all the red tape is holding them back. And meanwhile, that interest rate is making everything 10 times worse every single day. And man, did it ever escalate. Remember that settlement back in 2001? By the next year, 2002, that original debt amount, back in full force. And then, get this, by 2008, it's unbelievable, over $12 million.
$12 million? It's hard to even imagine that much money, let alone owe it. I'm starting to really get why the debtor felt so frustrated, so powerless.
And that's where we got to remember the human side of all this. Because, yeah, we've got numbers, legal stuff, financial transactions, but at the heart of it is a person, someone who put their time, their effort, even their own generosity into this property. And they talk about this feeling of being, and I'm quoting here, totally disregarded. Like, they tried to communicate and it was just blatant disregard. Imagine feeling like no one's even listening when you're trying to make things right.
It's tough to hear, honestly. They're trying to do the right thing, meet their obligations, but it's like they're stuck in a system designed to work against them. And as if it couldn't get any more complicated, there's another twist coming.
You said it. FINSAC was complicated enough, but then the debt gets sold again. New company takes over. Jocelyn Jamaica Limited. Imagine the debtor's confusion, right? Just when they're trying to get a handle on things, everything changes.
It's like a terrible game they're being forced to play. And with each change, I bet communication got even harder, more frustrating.
Exactly. You can see it in the debtor's letters, this urgency building, this desperate need for some clear answers. They're just trying to understand what's going on, how to deal with this new situation. But instead of answers, they get nothing.
That silence is deafening, isn't it? It says it all. You're being ignored. The system doesn't care. It just cares about the money. But they had to offer some kind of solution eventually, right? Even just for appearances.
They did. And this is where things get really head-scratching. Jocelyn Jamaica suggests the debtor pay off the debt with land bonds.
Now, land bonds, that's not something you hear every day. What are those, and how do they even work in this situation?
So it's kind of a niche thing, but interesting. Land bonds in Jamaica, they're these non-interest-bearing instruments, usually something the government uses. In this case, it would mean the debtor gives up a chunk of their land to Jocelyn Jamaica. The value of that land gets taken off the debt.
So instead of paying back with cash, they lose part of their property, which, considering that crazy high interest rate on the original loan, just seems unbalanced.
That's exactly what the debtor points out. It's like they're being punished for a debt that got out of control for reasons they couldn't even really control. Remember, they were already letting people lease the land for next to nothing, trying to help out, and they tried to sell some off to settle with FINSAC. That land, if it had been divided up and sold earlier, who knows how much it could have benefited the community.
It's tragic, really. This land, meant to be a source of support, of generosity, gets tangled up in this mess of debt and bureaucracy. We're back, and it feels like the stakes have never been higher. Our debtors facing this proposal give up part of their land. The same land they tried to use to fix this whole debt situation, the same land they used to help out their community. It's a turning point for sure.
And this is where the debtor's own words are really powerful. They come right out and question this whole land bond idea, especially because the first loan, that had all that interest attached to it. You can almost hear them thinking, hold on, how did we even get T here? How is this a fair solution?
Yeah, it's like the rules of the game changed while they were playing, and now they're just trying to find their footing. And it makes you wonder, does this happen a lot? Are these financial systems, even when they're technically legal, are they just stacked against the people they're supposed to help?
Man, that's the million-dollar question, right? Keeps the policymakers and ethicists up at night. And honestly, there's no easy answer. But this case, it highlights something crucial. We need transparency. We need a system where people, especially those struggling financially, they can understand their options. They can speak up for themselves and actually be heard.
It's so easy to get lost in all of it, right? The jargon, the paperwork, these huge financial institutions. Our debtor, they tried to talk, to negotiate, but they were met with silence over and over. That can really wear someone down, make them lose faith in the idea of a fair system.
No doubt. And we can't forget the emotional side of this, which is easy to do when we're talking about finances. This wasn't just numbers on a page. It was this person's life, how they made a living, their connection to the place they lived.
So where do we even go from here? What can people listening learn from all of this? I'm sure there are people out there right now dealing with their own financial struggles, feeling lost in the system.
Knowledge is power. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Know your rights as a borrower. Learn about this stuff. Yeah, even land bonds. Don't be afraid to get advice from the experts. Those are the things that give you power. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to make sure things are clear, to stand up for yourself.
Couldn't agree more. And this deep dive has been a masterclass in why you keep good records. Our debtor, they kept track of everything, every conversation, every letter, every financial statement. That paper trail, as annoying as it can be to keep up with, it can be your lifeline in these situations.
For sure. It also reminds us that these systems, they might seem impersonal, but they impact real people. The choices financial institutions make, how they treat the people who borrow from them, it matters. It goes way beyond just one transaction.
As we wrap up, I keep thinking about that 19-acre property, meant for farming, then offered up to help the community. It's a powerful image. Reminds us that every financial case, it's not just a file. There's a story there, a person, a whole life, with hopes and dreams and struggles.
Well said. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. Look past the numbers, See the human side of finance. Let's work towards a system that cares as much about compassion and fairness as it does about making a profit.
Thanks for being with us on this deep dive. One last thought before we go. If this story got to you, if it made you think or worry, don't let those feelings go. Talk to people. Talk to your community, the people you elected, financial advisors. Let's keep this conversation about a fairer financial system going.